World Press Freedom Day was proclaimed first in 1993 following a recommendation and adopted at UNESCO's 26th General Assembly in 1991. To start the proceedings today, I invite the next generation of journalists from the Sri Lanka College of Journalism to light a special lamp. If not for them, the newspapers would be just papers. If not for their passion and hunger for truth, all news would be as mellow fairy tales. It is their perseverance that uncovers the truth buried in high safety zones, away from the public's reach. Yet, with the bravery, there comes the eternal risk of death, intimidation, and abduction, to which a journalist cannot simply shake his or her head and say, "No, thank you." Let us please stand and remember those fallen journalists and media workers.
Imagine a world in which there is no right to inform, report, investigate, challenge, or express an opinion. This is a world where darkness infiltrates every corner of life, where truth is anathema and the power of knowledge simply unknown. Picture this world in which there is no freedom of expression and barely anyone left to defend it. This is a world where impunity prevails for unspeakable crimes suffered by countless millions. Heinous acts that silence critics and spread fear and violence at will. Offences against which governments are unwilling to act, where law and order are turned into tradable commodities, and justice becomes a spiraling nightmare of repression. This is a world where men and women are exiled from their homes and declared enemies of the very states to which their lives were dedicated to building. A world where corruption touches the very powers meant to protect. A world in which your voice goes unheard, your views are rejected, and your interests ignored. A world where those who defend the truth, publish facts, and speak out against tyranny are targeted, imprisoned, tortured, and left to rot in silence. A world in which the fear of retribution is ever present, stalking each word and encroaching between every line, where self-censorship becomes the only rule. This is a world that readily condemns an independent press as a plague to be eradicated, where the realities of poverty, war, rape, corruption, people trafficking, slavery, and genocide are all too familiar, yet remain unprintable. For over 5.5 billion people, this is the reality of their world today. You only know this because you are part of the fortunate 17% of the human race who enjoy unrestricted freedom of expression. This knowledge is power. Use it to help us make a difference. The conviction that free and independent newspapers play an indispensable role in maintaining free societies and guaranteeing human rights has been at the heart of this organization for over 60 years. Achieving our aims is neither easy nor straightforward, but the commitment to fighting in defense of rights and freedoms intended for all, yet enjoyed by so few, should inspire everyone concerned with human rights to promote a free and independent press worldwide. A free press is at the very core of the right to free expression, providing a frontline defense when it comes to safeguarding access to knowledge and information as defined in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. A free press provides a window through which all the abuses of this most fundamental of rights can be revealed. It affirms that to criticize, hold to account, and call to justice those in power is the right of the many and not the few. Put simply, freedom of expression is the right that underpins all rights. Yet media employees around the world face physical violence and persecution of all kinds, whether from public officials, criminals, or terrorists. Assaults are daily and often deadly for those who challenge governments, report on conflict, or investigate corruption and crime. These people are the courageous publishers, editors and journalists who continue in the face of repression to deliver the news and inform the public of their right to know. Together we can shed light into the darkest corners of the world and ensure these voices are never silenced and their words forever heard. Join us in making press freedom a reality for everyone.
Thank you. That video was with the courtesy of the World Association of Media, Newspapers and Publishers.
Sri Lanka remains to be one of the most dangerous countries in the world to be a journalist. Our ranking on the World Press Freedom Index has declined from 158 in 2010 to 161 in 2011. There are some who would like to explain away the situation by questioning the credentials of those who compiled the index, a group of Western organizations based in Paris or some other location. But if you look at the index carefully, you will see that as recent as 10 years ago, we were around 50 in this index. So to go from 50 to 160 is quite a decline and is a testament to where our media is today. How do we address this situation? I think we'll look at about 4 or 5 main areas that I would like to highlight this morning. The first is legislative changes. The SLPI was founded in a document called the Colombo Declaration on Media Freedom and Social Responsibility. Initially drafted in 1998, it was updated in 2008, and it preceded our existence also by a number of years. This document outlines the kind of legislative changes that are required to bring about a free media culture in this country. There are a lot of legislative changes that are required, but I wish to highlight one. The most important in our view, that is the Right to Information Act. When we go out of Colombo to conduct seminars and workshops all around Sri Lanka, what we find is that we ask journalists, what is your most basic need to practice your craft freely? All of them come up to us and say this right to information. This is very, very important to us. Even at a very local level, we are obstructed by officials, we are obstructed by those in power who deny us a basic information. So without information, how can we report? The Sri Lanka Press Institute, with our media partners, have worked on a draft. This draft is done in collaboration with the Legal Draftsman's Department. So it's ready, it's simply ready to be passed in Parliament. It was almost brought to Parliament in April 2010, but unfortunately the Minister of Justice at the time lost his seat in Parliament, and this piece of legislation has been shelved. This is a very watered down version of what we originally wanted, but then if you want an act passed, then you have to balance the requirements of various stakeholders. So the first one I think that we require is this piece of legislation to be passed. It's ready. The excuse we've had over the last few decades is that it takes time to draft legislation. Well, this is a piece of legislation drafted by the Legal Draftsman's Department, obviously in association with SLPI. So I urge individual members of Parliament to step up and first, more than anything else, move towards implementing at least, it may be this draft, maybe another updated draft of the freedom of information legislation, because without the legislative environment, it is very difficult for free media to exist. There are other laws that we would wish to be amended or removed. It's detailed in the Colombo Declaration. You can get a copy from SLPI, it's free of charge. And I think we need to move towards legislative environment enabling media freedom. The second one I wish to highlight is the need to bring to account those who have undertaken attacks and murder of journalists in Sri Lanka over the last few decades. This is not a new phenomenon. We've had it for several decades now. Without bringing those who practice impunity to justice, we cannot expect the media environment to be free. I'm not a journalist by profession, but I have met enough in Sri Lanka and now in South Asia as well. And I ask them when I meet them, what motivates you? What on a day-to-day basis, what drives you? What drives stories that you write? What are the influences that influence you? Obviously, they have a publisher or a media owner who obviously will determine what gets printed or what gets published. But what they tell me is the people around them, their spouses, their relatives, their siblings, their kids, they are the ultimate arbiters of what they write. This may not sound professional to you, but what they say is, my wife tells me, I don't want you gone. I don't care what you write, but I don't want to be dead, because then I don't have you. Your words may be there, it may be immortal, but you're not there. So the need to bring to justice those who have perpetrated the attacks and murders of all journalists in the last few decades, not just in the last 10, 15 years, maybe beyond that, is paramount. Case files may be old, documents may be missing, but I think the effort needs to be made. Because without that, you will never ever see a free media culture in Sri Lanka. The third aspect that I'd like to highlight is the need to work on professionalizing media. I think we've started on that with the Sri Lanka College of Journalism, but that is only to the extent of new entrants into the industry. We have produced over 400 graduates over the last 7 to 8 years, but when you consider there are thousands of journalists out there, this is mere a drop in a huge ocean. So the Sri Lanka Press Institute, with partners in the media industry, and I'm very happy that we have partners across both state media, private media, electronic media, and the online community, have come together to develop a professional qualification for journalists in Sri Lanka. Why is this important in terms of media freedom? Because if you look at how a journalist develops in Sri Lanka, you will see that they are picked up by the media organization after maybe their O-levels and A-levels, and they are trained on the job. And thereafter, they effectively become slaves to that media organization. They do not have a passport that gives them access between media organizations, and therefore, they're being able to be free and open in what they do. A professional qualification will give them that passport. Will give them a currency which they can use within media organizations, both locally and internationally, and they will be much more independent as individuals. It is individuals, individual voices that come together and give you a collective conscience for society. So we have progressed immensely in this qualification. The structure is in place. We have partners who hopefully will assist us in funding it as well. But more importantly, we also have international recognitions for it. The National Training Council for Journalists in UK, you saw the lady who heads it in the video. They have come here, they've looked at our qualification, and they are very positive about accrediting it. The Foyo Media Institution in Sweden is also looking at accrediting it. So the most important thing is we want to give individual journalists freedom from their employer, freedom from influences from society, so that they can go out there and speak their heart out and say what they believe in without fear of their professional careers. The more independent and professional they are, the more their output will be. Let me conclude by placing these few thoughts in your mind. Sri Lanka's media environment is not free. We need to move towards freedom, because we had democratic traditions dating back to 1931, well before we became an independent country. A few dynasties may think that this tradition may change, but it will not. And I urge individual members of parliament to pass initially this act, this Right to Information Act that is ready. It is, use your conscience and pass this piece of legislation. Start with that, and then we will move towards a better media environment in this country. Thank you.
And now I take great pleasure in inviting the moderator for this morning's session, Ms. Champika Liyanaarachchi, editor of the Daily Mirror. Incidentally, Champika is the first woman journalist to be the editor of a daily newspaper. She is also director of the Commonwealth Journalists Association, Sri Lanka representative for the Paris-based Reporters Without Borders, RSF, from 2003 to 2006. Champika is also winner of the Women of Achievement in Media Award, presented by the Sri Lanka chapter of the Chicago-based International